I know fried chicken and even grilled chicken is pretty delicious on any given day, but have you ever stared at like a live chicken for more than a couple of seconds? They're weird, and according to Napoleon Dynamite, they have large talons. They have feathers. They have weird little wrinkly skin all over them. They're pretty disgusting, and yet we're munching on them. I wonder who was the first person that came up with the idea of eating chicken. I mean, I guess he's kind of a pioneer in certain ways, but also kind of weird and gross. I've never looked at a chicken and thought of slapping some barbecue sauce on it, but I guess we got chicken tenders out of that, so why am I complaining? Anyways, as much as I would love to sit here and just blab on about delicious chicken, we're not going to be doing that. Today we're talking about the exaggerated amount of McFarlane collectibles that we are going to receive in the foreseeable future. He's been hard at work, and I wanted to kind of break down some of the stuff that he's been offering. Some of this has either gone up for pre-order at the moment of this recording, or we've only received promotional images, which is enough to get any true collector an absolute hard on. So let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any more breath. I thought we would recap really quickly some of the SDCC exclusive stuff that he's offering there. I've already talked about some of these collectibles, so I'm not really going to get too in depth with them. I'm just going to quickly breeze through them. We are getting that Justice League 3-pack Superpowers action figure set that's going to have like a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive packaging, and then they're going to have like that different paint deco on them. Obviously nothing too exciting, nothing too crazy, but it's something cool for the San Diego Comic-Con crowd. There will also be an Agent Liberty action figure, which also is exclusive to the San Diego Comic-Con event. It's worth mentioning that as a moment of this recording, which probably is like a week from the time that I actually uploaded, but none of these collectibles are available, or at least have been made available online. So it seems that these are going to be true San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, and we also don't know if they will be available at a later date. Although having said that, I think Agent Liberty is one of those prime candidates to be re-released later with like maybe alternate color schemes or different accessories, things of that nature. There will also be a Bruce Wayne and Ace 2-pack DC Direct action figure from McFarlane. This is a really interesting one. I kind of briefly talked about it in my previous video, but essentially these are two figures that are being released for the DC Direct line, not the DC Multiverse line, which is a completely different scale and completely different articulation scheme. So it's really interesting. We haven't received any Batman Beyond action figures that I can recall in the DC Direct line. I could be wrong, but the Batman Beyond universe thus far from McFarlane, we have only received in the DC Multiverse line. So it's really interesting that he would decide to do this. Regardless, those will also be at the event if you guys are interested in picking those two up. McFarlane is also rolling out his Centennial Park tribute statue Superman. It's essentially Superman and that hawk accessory in just like a bronze/gold plastic, very similar to the Superpowers action figures. It's nothing new, nothing crazy, but it's something interesting to have as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's more just a quick little recap because I did break down all of the San Diego, or at least most of the San Diego Comic-Con collectible exclusives that are going to be available at the event, and then obviously there will be a very limited amount made available online through certain retailers, so keep an eye on that. But as I said, as far as I'm concerned, everything that's McFarlane SDCC exclusive will be available only at the convention floor. Now, moving on from that small little quick recap, I wanted to talk about these Marvel Comics McFarlane Toys diorama sets. These are very interesting. I believe maybe like a few months ago we got the announcement that McFarlane was going to team up with Marvel to bring us some very interesting collectibles. Now, at the time, most people assumed that it would be like a 1/10 scale action figure line, but those rumors were quickly put down because we eventually got confirmation that these would be like small little statues or diorama sets. And we finally got some images, and some pre-orders have gone up now. And just as an FYI, at least one of these has already sold out through multiple different retailers. So just keep an eye on that. I don't think that they'll all sell out, but there's a high probability that as time goes by or as we get closer to that release date, I think a lot of these will continue to sell out. They're very intriguing, and honestly, I have at least 2 of these in my cart. I'm going to potentially pre-order some of these. 4 of these are supposed to be 1/10th scale, and then 2 of these are 1/6th scale. The ones that are in the 1/10th scale will be made available at the $29.99 price point. The 1/6th scale diorama pieces will be available at $59.99. Makes perfect sense. That's usually what they retail for, and I'm very surprised that even the 1/10th scale, he's making them available at the $40 or $30 price point, because I have seen other OMs, even if they are 1/10th scale, mark those collectibles up quite a bit. Now, I don't usually cover statues or diorama sets on this channel because if it's not articulated, it just doesn't really get me going. It needs to articulate. I need to be able to pose it in my style, so it's really weird to be talking about these, but McFarlane did a phenomenal job, and I think that they definitely deserve a little bit of a spotlight, even if it's coming from a tiny little POS channel like this one. And if there was any doubt which particular diorama set I was going to get into first, well, let's start off with the hottest one, and that is the Deadpool, obviously from his first appearance in that New Mutants 98 comic book issue. It's worth mentioning that all of these will come with a cardboard cutout backdrop, as well as a card that is supposed to be based on that particular comic book cover. I absolutely love it. I get it. Deadpool's proportions are completely ridiculous in this particular diorama set, but that's what is great about that era. Artists took a lot of liberties to really stylize these particular characters, and this is just a prime example of that. It looks beautiful. It retails for $29.99, and I love the Deadpool lettering at the bottom as well. It's not something that they needed to include, but it's just kind of like a little extra bonus sculpt that they decided to throw in there. And I'm honestly quite surprised that the diorama set for Deadpool has not sold out, considering he is probably the hottest, most popular Marvel character at the moment, with the Deadpool/Wolverine film right around the corner. But I checked a couple of different retailers and they all seem to still have them in stock, at least at the moment of this recording. We will also be getting a Spider-Man based on Spider-Man issue number 6, which is supposed to have some sort of storyline based on Hobgoblin. I'm not too familiar with this particular storyline, but it seems pretty intriguing, and this is probably one of my favorite of the entire wave. It has a really cool dynamic pose. It's very reminiscent of what artists were drawing at that time, but not only that, it's just something sleek. It's something cool. It's not just a boring generic pose of the character in an upright stance, very similar to what we saw with Deadpool. This is Spider-Man actually getting into the action, web swinging. I absolutely love this particular dio piece, and even though for the most part I don't love these cardboard backdrops for these type of collectibles, I actually genuinely like this one. It has like the city landscape in the background. Really cool, very reminiscent of the classic depictions of New York City in comic book form. And just to reiterate, this will be available at the 1/10th scale and will also retail for $29.99. We will also be getting an Iron Man dio piece, which is based on the Invincible Iron Man number 126. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going off the top of my memory, but that is supposed to be the Iron Man Mark IV suit. It's a phenomenal classic vintage Iron Man look, but it's really disappointing because I feel like if you wanted an even more iconic version or a pose of Iron Man, you would have gone with something where he's like in flight, maybe using his repulsor blasters to blast away an enemy or something along those lines. It's also worth noting that I did take a quick look at the cover for this particular issue, and I believe it's featured on the card that's included with the dio set as well, and it's completely off in terms of the color scheme. I'm not sure if he was trying to kind of take the design and just add his own color palette, but I didn't necessarily love it. The original one is a lot more matte and a lot less vibrant, which is my personal favorite look for Iron Man. Not to say that it's a bad dio piece. It's really cool. It's iconic, but there are a couple things here and there that I personally would have changed. And even though I'm not a huge fan of cell shading, this would have been a great piece to add even more cell shading to it. It does have a little bit, but I think it could have used just a tad bit more accurate depiction of Iron Man, at least in this cover art, because I absolutely love it. It would have been really nice to get some cell shading, get the right color tone for this Iron Man. But same thing, if you guys are interested, it will also retail for $29.99, and it still falls within that 1/10 scale as well. McFarlane will also be rolling out a 1/10 scale Dio Wolverine, which looks really well done, really well sculpted, but honestly, it's another one of those Dio pieces that I felt like needed a more iconic look, maybe him lunging at an enemy or just going all out berserk mode. There are a number of other versions that I would have gone with, not necessarily this one. I think obviously my favorite one has to be that Spider-Man thus far, and even though Deadpool doesn't necessarily have like a cool action pose, it at least has an iconic pose, because that's essentially how everybody remembers Deadpool's first appearance. It's a good solid collectible if you guys are interested. Again, $29.99, still falls within that 1/10 scale range. Next up, we have Captain America from the Amazing Spider-Man 363 issue, and unlike the paint job on the Iron Man that really didn't resemble the comic book cover, this is definitely at least as close as you can get in action figure form to a character featured in a comic book page. I really like the sculpt work here, but I will say the thing that really stands out is that paint job. The shading does a perfect job of making certain areas of the outfit stand out. It looks phenomenal, but as is the case, if you guys have ever watched any of my content, you guys will know I love action poses. So this one is iconic and cool, and it has the Captain America logo at the bottom, or I should say at the base of the Dio piece, but I would have loved something that's like mid-action, something crazy, something iconic. Regardless, this particular collectible does fall within that 1/6 scale, basically meaning it's much bigger than the previous collectibles, and it also probably has a lot of girth and much more weight to it, so it will retail at $49.99. And then the last Dio piece that McFarlane is going to offer is another Spider-Man. This one is based on that beautiful Amazing Spider-Man 301 comic book cover, and honestly, this is breathtaking. I absolutely love it. This is exactly what I want in some of these Dio pieces or statues. I want action. I want something that's in a dynamic pose, because obviously I can't articulate it. I can't change the way that it looks once I purchase it, and this is exactly what I'm referring to. This is iconic. He's in like a mid web swinging pose, and you can actually see the web effect piece as well towards the back of the Dio piece. I just love this. I think this is probably the best one, and it shows because I was checking Big Bad Toy Store. I'm not sure with the other OMs, but I was going to Big Bad Toy Store to get some of the images and some of the information, and according to their listings, this one is the only Dio piece, at least at the moment of me recording this, it's the only Dio piece that has sold out. So it may be available through other retailers, but at least on Big Bad Toy Store and I believe one other retailer, they're completely sold out, which is crazy considering McFarlane did offer a 1/10 scale Spider-Man for $29.99, which is I believe the first or second Dio piece that we talked about, but people are gravitating more towards this one. And yes, this also falls into that 1/6 scale, and it will be available at $59.99. Just keep an eye on this, because I think this one has potential to sell out across the board. There is also a teaser image that is floating online that features a 1966 Batman from McFarlane, and I know exactly what most of you guys are thinking. Hey, we've already received a 66 line from McFarlane. However, this is from the DC Multiverse line, meaning better articulation, more intricate sculpt work, better paint apps, and overall just higher quality figures. Now, as of the moment of this recording, we don't have any prices, we don't have any other accessories, we just have this teaser image, and we don't even know if it's a part of the DC Multiverse line or if it's a part of the collector's edition line, because obviously there are big differences in prices, and whether this will also be a part of maybe a Build-A-Figure wave. At this point, we just don't know, and honestly, I hate talking about teaser images because there's just very little information attached to them, but this is something to get excited about. I'm going to take a guess here and say that we are getting some new accessories, but this is probably just going to be a reuse of that Nightfall Batman body mold with the new head sculpt, and I'm okay with that. I think this is good, smart reuse. So stay tuned. Eventually we will receive more information and I'll give you guys some of that info. But yeah, very exciting for those of us that have been waiting this from the DC Multiverse line or the 7-inch line from McFarlane. McFarlane also threw up for pre-order this really weird 3-figure wave that is supposed to be part of that collector's edition line. It will include the old school Joker Red Hood as well as Clock King and Ragman. And let me reiterate exactly what I just said. Yes, these are a part of that collector's edition line. They don't really come with anything new as far as I can tell. The body sculpts may just be reused from some old figures, so I'm kind of questioning exactly why these are placed in the collector's edition line. I have read some comments, I have watched some commentary from different collectors, and it seems like the consensus, or at least what McFarlane is making people believe, and the consensus from the community that is defending him, they're essentially saying that it's because they're like lesser known characters, and so it's very difficult for him to move them, and that's one of the main reasons that they're at a much higher price point. But honestly, this really doesn't make a lot of sense for people that collect outside of the DC Multiverse line. Hasbro has done this pretty successfully over the years. Anytime that they're going to release a Build-A-Figure wave, what they usually do is they'll throw in maybe 1 or 2 characters that are not as well known. They have kind of like a very small cult following online. That's usually how they get away with releasing some of these. Sometimes they don't even come with any extra accessories aside from the bath piece. That makes way more sense than what McFarlane is doing here. Now, Clock King is definitely the most interesting one of the trio. The dude literally has a clock for a face, and in case you guys are wondering when his first appearance was, yes, it was way back in the 60s when stuff like this would definitely sell well, or at least be acceptable by the comic book community. But honestly, I could never see this flying nowadays. He does appear to have a cloth cape, and just from looking at this character, it seems like he would say like cheesy dad jokes about time, like maybe, hey, time flies, as he's flying, or maybe he'll say something like your time has run out as he's like escaping, I don't know, Batman or whoever's chasing him. I don't know. That's just what pops into my head. He seems like the cheesiest character of all time, but if you're interested, he is now available. He does come with like 2 extra accessory pieces, which are like the clock hands for like old school clocks. I don't know if people still have old school clocks. Most people just look at their phone or have digital watches, but it's a pretty interesting figure. If it weren't going for that $29.99 price point, it would be something that really would stand out in your display for sure. Bare minimum, I still feel like McFarlane should have at least thrown in an action figure stand just as a bonus for buying this obscure character. And then you have Ragman, who also does not come with an action figure stand, just comes with like 2 effect pieces for each arm. I doubt this is a brand new action figure body mold. I don't think there's any new sculpt work here. I think maybe just the cape that he's wearing may be new from what I can tell. I don't think any of the patchwork on his body is molded on. I think probably, I would say almost all of it is just printed on or painted on somehow, but it's just another one of those really weird obscure characters that McFarlane is rolling out at really not a great time, because you have SDCC right around the corner. Or maybe, I guess it maybe makes sense because it kind of gets lost in the entire whirlwind of collectibles that are being thrown out there. So maybe it does make sense for him to do this right now, but that price point I think definitely hurts way more with this particular figure. But we can all definitely agree that the most painful figure in this tiny little wave has to be that classic Golden Age Red Hood action figure. This was before Jason Todd took up the mantle. A lot of people tend to forget that Joker is the original Red Hood. As of the moment of this recording, there are multiple different retailers that have actually sold out on Red Hood, and he actually does come with a decent array of accessories. He comes with a pickaxe, a knife, a small arrow launcher, and then obviously that ridiculous card stand that every single collector's edition action figure comes with. But as I said, it's painful because this seems to be the one that's selling out of the 3, especially considering we just got the first appearance Batman. This Red Hood perfectly fits that Golden Age aesthetics. Not to mention that body mold gives me chills. Could we potentially see an Alfred down the line, maybe with like a tray or something, like some coffee mugs or something along those lines. Master Wayne definitely needs his butler, and I think this would be a really good reuse, especially considering that entire body is kind of thin and lanky, kind of similar to the way that Alfred is usually drawn in comic books. If you guys haven't had quite enough McFarlane for today, I decided to save the best for last. We are supposed to be getting a General and Jonah Hex 2-packs deluxe action figure set. Now this is definitely one of those bittersweet moments where you realize not only is this a McFarlane toy exclusive, considering it is already going for $69.99, and if I'm not mistaken, I have never purchased anything directly from the McFarlane toy store, but from my understanding, you're supposed to pay for shipping. There's no like minimum where you can get free shipping or anything along those lines, so you will be paying for shipping, but you are also getting the General. And if you've ever bought, you know, the 2-pack Witcher figure with the horse, or if you've bought the Gunslinger, or in my case, if you were able to complete that horse Build-A-Figure from the Dark Knight Returns wave, the Jonah Hex action figure, as well as the Batman from that particular wave. So I really don't need another horse in my display. Plus, it seems to take up way too much space in any of the glass display cases that I have right now. Jonah Hex, however, comes absolutely loaded. He comes with 2 revolvers, a shotgun, a knife, a sword, a machete, some holsters, as well as a cloth jacket, which looks phenomenal. The figure definitely comes with an insane amount of accessories, giving you options when it comes down to posing and displaying him. And it's also worth noting that it comes with 2 alternate belts, so it just depends on what exactly it is that you're going to holster, whether it's the 2 revolvers or whether it's the hatchet and the knife. And I hate to complain about such a great release, but honestly, this feels like a bit of a stretch for me. I think McFarlane should have just released this as maybe a collector's edition line without it being a 2-pack. That horse body mold, if it is indeed the exact same one, is getting really old really quickly, and anybody that collects McFarlane action figures should at least have one of these, if not 2, in their display. Regardless, I think it's a sign of good things to come. He continues to give us really deep cuts, characters that even though he is marking up the price by quite a bit, at least he's giving us something new. They're not just all Batman and Supermans and Wonder Womans. He's giving us some really obscure comic book characters, and I think that is definitely appeasing his hardcore fan base. But there you have it. If you guys are interested in any of these, they're either up for pre-order or they should be going up fairly soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts down below. Very curious to see what the community has to say. I definitely enjoy bringing this type of content to you guys, so if you guys enjoy it, definitely stick around. We do upload action figure content pretty consistently. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Continue to enjoy the hobby. That's the most important part of all of this. Let me know what figure it is that you're the most excited about down below. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one.